Well, hi everybody. My name is Rebecca Martin, and I'm one of the business development managers here at Real Story Group. Thanks for taking the time out and joining us. Today, we're excited to spend some time talking about the ever-changing landscape of marketing technology. With the core focus now centered on customer journeys, marketing leaders like yourselves are going to continue to be more reliant on complex technology solutions moving forward. So much so that no marketing strategy is going to be successfully implemented without having the right tools in place. And this scenario is exactly why we exist as a company. And today we're going to share some important considerations to keep in mind when selecting marketing technology for your company. So moving on to the next slide, a quick introduction to Real Story Group. The core of everything we do is based in our research, and we only work for buyers of technology. So we represent you. We maintain a strict independence when evaluating the technology vendors that we cover, and we don't work for these vendors in any way. And believe it or not, it's unique. This approach is definitely unique in the analyst industry. But this allows us to be the toughest critics out there. We are completely unbiased when we're evaluating where the vendors that we cover are potentially a good fit, but what might be more important for you, the technology buyer, is where the products and the platforms are not such a good fit. And there's three ways that I'll highlight that we typically work with our customers. So the first way that we typically work with our subscribers is to help them get to the right shortlist for technology selection. We do that via our research subscriptions, and then we have a few different online tools that we make available that help navigate that research. We do select a number of consulting projects each year. And then the last way that I'll highlight here is our tool Real Score. So Real Score is actually changing the way that companies are benchmarking their effectiveness with the technology that they already have. So let us know if you want more information on that. So the next slide here, you can see a high-level overview of the digital marketing and digital workplace marketplaces that we have broken down into our 7 different core areas of coverage. But Kashyap, if you don't mind just forwarding to the next slide, yeah. I like this view because you can see the marketplaces that we just talked about, but the marketplaces, they're represented by each subway line, if you will, but you can see which products and which platforms that we provide our deep dive evaluations in each of the marketplaces, and those are, I guess, kind of represented by the subway stops, if you will. So this is our digital workplace and our digital marketing technology vendor map. This is available on our website. So if you just go to realstorygroup.com, we have versions available for you there. So a few quick things to mention before I turn it over to Kashyap. So as a follow-up for those of you on the call, we're going to be providing a copy of today's PowerPoint slides for you. For our subscribers on the line, we'll have an archived version of today's presentation. That's going to be available on your subscriber dashboard, just for reference. And then finally, as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions at all, just if you'll type them in the questions tab, this way Kashyap will be able to find it and then address it towards the end of the presentation. So we're going to go ahead and get the conversation started on MarTech selection. And to walk us through this discussion, I'm going to turn it over to Kashyap Kompella. Kashyap is one of our research directors here at Real Story Group, covering digital marketing technologies. So Kashyap, with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Rebecca, and it's wonderful that all of you could join us today. So today I'm going to provide a quick overview of the trends for 2017, dispel some myths around MarTech, describe a framework for increasing your effectiveness, and discuss how you can make your MarTech investments more customer-centric. But the main thrust and focus of my presentation is to do a deep dive on our recommended technology selection methodology that ties all of it together. So let me first start by talking about some trends. Not in terms of what's creating buzz out there, but what's the real priority for CMOs in 2017. So if you look at the tag cloud, some of them are long-standing topics and will be familiar to you. Topics such as omni-channel strategy, real-time marketing, personalization, marketing automation, mobile and responsive design. Some other topics such as content marketing, video marketing, data management platforms, account-based marketing, these are more recent, but there's a lot of interest in adding them to the marketer toolkit. Yet some other things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality, virtual reality, bots, we think that these are still very much in the early adoption phase. There's a lot of curiosity and some pilot projects, but not so much actual on-ground implementations here. So the takeaway here is that really marketers have to grapple with two issues. One is make sure that their foundational marketing technology foundational marketing technology has a strong foundation, strong pillars. And two, you also need to keep an eye on emerging technologies, and as they mature, add them to their portfolio. While tracking trends is important, equally important is dispelling myths, particularly when it comes to selecting technology. And believe me, there are a lot of myths and half-truths that pervade the MarTech space. So based on our discussions and work with a wide range of customers, we compiled the top 10 list. And if you look at the list here, these pertain to a single platform that can make all your requirements. You're missing out because you haven't implemented certain MarTech tools, and these are very easy to implement, etc. But these myths arise because of several reasons. First, of course, is vendor hype. Of course, it suits vendors to promote their product as the magical silver bullets that will take care of all your marketing requirements. But and secondly, marketing technology is no doubt very complex, this world, and it's changing quite a bit. So some customers may succumb to the hype and think they're the only ones left behind, while the rest of their peers have leapfrogged. But suffice to say that usually there is an overestimation of the capabilities of the tools on one hand, and an underestimation of the complexity, the efforts, and the resources required for successful MarTech implementations. So a quick reality check. So we did a survey last year of 100 plus large enterprises about their MarTech experiences, and the takeaways were quite interesting. So very clearly, as you see on the graphs here, it's very early days when it comes to implementing marketing technologies such as marketing automation. Many enterprises don't think that they have the right internal expertise. Only a third of the enterprises complete their projects on time. And more interestingly, from a technology selection point of view, only a third of the enterprises leverage the full potential of the tools that they purchased. And we think that some of this value leakage is because they do not have the best fit tools for their requirements. So not surprisingly, the customer satisfaction is not very high when it comes to MarTech products. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is not satisfied and 10 is very satisfied, the midpoint of the scale is 5.5. On this scale, the reported customer satisfaction is only slightly better than the midpoint at 5.8. So the bottom line simply is this: there is a strong sense of dissatisfaction and underperformance. So why does this underperformance, or why is there this low level of satisfaction? It can be because of a couple of factors or gaps. The first that you see on the left is the customer capacity gap. Here, the constraint is more internal. Simply put, the enterprise is not yet ready to leverage the technology and tools. Well, the second gap is the hyperbole gap. Here, the vendors overpromise, but the tools underdeliver. You can overcome this gap by understanding the real capabilities of the tools, and a lot of our work is focused in this area. And of course, you also need to use a smart selection process that emphasizes practical and business value, and I'll describe that selection process in the second part of this thing. So first, let's talk about closing this capacity gap. So to understand why your enterprise may be underperforming, you need a holistic assessment of your effectiveness. So what you're looking at here is a framework we developed called the Real Score, and it lets you rate your maturity across several foundational factors, such as do we have the right expertise, the right skill sets and the people? Are you actually managing to the right scope? Do you have all the right processes in place, or are there areas where you can optimize your process and potentially automate some of them? Do you actually have the right systems? It's frequently the case that you might have a perfectly adequate system, but you don't have the right expertise, or you're not managing to the right scope, so that you don't make effective use of your systems. And it's also possible that you don't have a right fit system, and you might need to replace the tool. So this model helps you realize where the gaps are. I have provided the link to this model out here, and I encourage you to give it a try and evaluate and assess where you stand today. So if you look at what we've done so far, I gave a very quick overview of the trends, the myths, the state of MarTech, measuring effectiveness. And these four are actually entire topics by themselves. And in fact, we did separate webinars on each of them in the last few months and quarters. So if you're a subscriber, you can access these webinars on demand if any of them is of interest to you. So with that context, let me move into the core and meat of the presentation, which is about the vendor landscape and how you pick and choose among vendors. So here across the top, we have campaign and lead management. So these are the tools that help you manage and nurture your customer base or lead space and targetedly market and promote your specific products, services, or content to that very carefully nurtured list. So across the middle, you have a digital and marketing asset management. The keyword here really being asset. So these are tools that are very focused on managing your brand assets, your images, and even branching into managing things like packaging and labeling experiences. Of course, these assets get tied into the campaign and lead management tools as well. So across the bottom, we have our longest standing research area, which is web content and experience management. And this is a space we've been covering since our founding more than 15 years ago. Here we see a tremendous amount of change as well. So these used to be rather simplistic tools to just help you manage web templates and push content to the web. But now they're more about managing broader customer experiences involving personalization and e-commerce and assets and data from disparate systems. Sure, across all these things, there may be a bit of functional overlap. And as an implementer and from a practical standpoint, it's extremely important to understand what's going to be your system of record. Not only in each of these boxes, but you also need to figure out how to connect these different technologies so that your customers can have their end-to-end experiences. And also, I mean, not just for customers, but also for internal marketers, they might have to use multiple tools across the board, so it's important for them as well. So now we come to this customer-centric model, which lets you think more holistically about tying in your MarTech investments to your customer. So as buyers and implementers of technology, we can often get lost in technology for technology's sake and sometimes forget the bigger picture, which is that what's the customer experience that we're really trying to enable here? And this is the view that this model, this reference model tries to provide. Here you got customers in the middle or the center. So you want them to be able to discover, transact, and belong to your brand. And that keeps them loyal because that's really what keeps them coming back and engaging them. So your technologies need to be useful. They need to provide value and enable your customers and even inspire and delight them so they keep coming back so that they discover, transact, and belong. So next, what we've illustrated in the light blue circle in the middle are the journeys that your customers are probably taking with you across different touch points, whether on a mobile device or on a website or even in a kiosk in a store. So these journeys can be very nuanced and detailed. So you might want to map out these journeys and the particular actions that the customers may be taking on the website or on the app, and to have and figure out what are the specific technologies that will enable those journeys and activities. Then next, the gray circle is mapping experiences to particular journeys, and the outward purple circle is showing you the enterprise services that you need to have and enable in your organization. So as a marketer, you really need to fill this out and figure out sitting along with the IT teams and other stakeholders and say, here is the technology that we're going to plug into each of these boxes in the purple circle and the gray circle. And this is how we're going to enable the experiences. So we've done a very detailed advisory paper on a customer-centric model for MarTech. There is also a stack view associated with this. So if you're a subscriber, I'd encourage you to read that as well. So before we move into the actual selection process itself, just a quick nod to our evaluations. Across the three different streams or categories that you saw, we provide 82 in-depth evaluations. And across all of these evaluations, the emphasis is really on fit with your business case. How well does a product support or not support a given set of use cases? That's what we look for in these evaluations. And also, you need to look beyond the product and assess the vendor and the larger ecosystem around them. And this is important for the longevity of the technology health and the longevity of your implementations. So these strategic considerations help you assess the overall fit to your requirements. And we provide detailed ratings and commentary and narrative around the strategic considerations as well. So ideally, you'd want a high fit on both the use cases as well as the strategic considerations. So next we come to the million-dollar question. That is, how do you figure out what's the right fit vendor or product for you? So there's a tendency, of course, to say something is the best product, right? And you can always find a quadrant or a wave to support your decision. So what you see on this slide is actually a joke. And here we talk about a mystical quadrant. But a lot of people actually believe that this is the right approach, surprisingly so. That you can use a generic quadrant, which really is a simple 2x2 box, to make your technology selection. But I strongly feel that despite what some high priests may preach, there is really no magic spot on a mystical quadrant that will guarantee you nirvana. So we offer an alternative to this, which we call the Real Quadrant. So the Real Quadrant, it uses all of our research on the back end. And with the same vendors and the same products, you can come up with very customized quadrants that are a good fit for your requirements. So you go into our tool, you can weight how important the various scenarios are and weight how important the different strategic considerations are. So that the tool takes these requirements as inputs and can generate multiple quadrants for you. As you tweak your inputs, you keep getting different quadrants. So you can see the list of scenarios, which is B2B, B2C, social, and mobile. So, I mean, not all of these are equally important to you at any given point of time. Probably you're focusing on a set of use cases rather than all of them. So what I have done here is that just to reiterate here, the axis here on this Real Quadrant, the x-axis here is the scenario fit. In other words, which is how well does a vendor execute on the scenarios we talked about. And if you remember the 10 strategic considerations, that's the y-axis. So how much do these fit our weights for these considerations? So that's the y-axis. So whether explicitly stated or not, vendors target specific use cases. And when it comes to MarTech, the diversity of the use cases is staggering. And we see this time and again, despite their tall claims, no one vendor is good at all of these use cases. So to illustrate that, what I've done is in the Real Quadrant tool, I select all use cases and equally weigh all the strategic considerations. And our tool assesses vendors on the basis of a loose fit, a medium fit, and a better fit. This is highlighted in the top left there. And here are the results. What are the results that I get? I mean, I don't get a single vendor. I get a blank quadrant with a message saying there are no products that match the selected filter. So if you remember the myths, there is like one of the myths that vendor perpetuate is that there is a single platform that can meet all your marketing requirements. But in our evaluations, we find that's never usually the case. So next, I relax the criterion a bit and say, instead of a better fit, let me look for medium fit. Are there any vendors available? So as you can see, even then you'll find that no vendor is able to satisfy all of them. I mean, you don't see them in the high scenario, high strategic quadrant, but somewhere else on the map. So the lesson here is that from a selection point of view, you first need to identify the set of use cases that are important to you. What are those use cases that your business is trying to solve? And then shortlist the vendors that are a good fit for that specific set of use cases. So based on the use cases and your requirements, you can generate a customized version of the quadrant or a shortlist that's right for you. So this tool is available at the link that is shown out there. So this is something that I would encourage you, just log on to our site, go to the tools area, and even check this out for yourself. So next, let's look at the selection approaches. So we find that broadly there are 4 approaches, and you definitely want to avoid these 4 traditional suboptimal approaches. We talked a lot about the first one, which is the sort of the horse race. Who's ahead, who's behind, who's the winner, who's loser about. So obviously that's a big no-no. The second one we see a lot in this segment is down here in the lower left, which is love at first sight. So I saw this tool, it looks really cool. It works great for me and for my 4 colleagues in my department, so it's going to work for everyone else. But really, you have to understand that for all of these tools, there is always a competitor, there are always alternatives, and you want to view them in that context. Next there's a third approach, which is what we call the my cousin Winnie kind of approach, which is, well, it worked over here in that other organization, so it's going to work for us as well. The reality is that you're different, even if you're in the same industry. Yes, you should definitely talk to your peers and get their feedback, but your needs and interests are likely to be different. And so is your level of maturity and your ability. And certainly your culture is going to be important. So you shouldn't just rely on the advice of others. So that rules out the third approach. And the fourth one, which is, we sometimes label this as happiness is a stack of warm binders. That is, I'm going to develop all these detailed cross-tabbed requirements and a list of Excel spreadsheets, and that's going to tell me which of these tools is going to be the best thing. So you can get the vendors to fill all of these checkbox type grids and that sort of a thing. But the vendors have seen all this, and this is what they do day in and day out. So they can very well check all the boxes. So in a sense, the more time you spend doing that, the more likely that your true priorities, the really important business scenarios, can get lost in all of that. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you can key in on just what are the critical business scenarios and how much you want to weigh them. So once you've done that, so what you want to do next is to employ an empirical approach to winnowing down. And we describe this as a set of increasingly intimate series of interactions before you get married. You could start with an RFP, or if that's for demos with your use cases, with your own teams, and then trying it out. Ideally getting hands-on, getting trained on the tool, and trying it out in a competitive proof of concept, and maybe a pilot project. The key thing here is really emphasizing testable narratives and practicing customer-centered design or user-centered design. So in other words, tying this back to the customer-centric MarTech model, really taking this from the customer's perspective, trying to understand what they want to do, what they can get out of this technology, and moving forward from that perspective with personas and journeys and top tasks, that kind of a thing. And remember that you're also likely to spend a lot of money on implementation services. I mean, integration, technical work, a lot of this is going to be involved either through the vendor's professional services or a third-party systems integrator. So you definitely want to do due diligence on the implementation team. So that's why, I mentioned a proof of concept. So you can consider doing a competitive proof of concept where you can test out the actual people who are going to be implement your project for you. So that was a very quick tour of the trends, the myths, the vendor landscape, and how you can increase your MarTech effectiveness and the selection approach. And we also looked at the recommended methodology. So before handing this to Rebecca for next steps, I just want to highlight the 2 underlying themes out here, which were both, this whole webinar was focused on the first theme of how you can make your existing MarTech investments more customer-centric and generate more ROI out of them. The second is a recommended technology selection methodology that takes into consideration the trends, the actual experience on the ground of implementing these projects, as well as your own specific requirements. So with that, I'm going to take a look at the questions, but request Rebecca to talk about the next steps.
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Kashyap. So as Kashyap's reviewing the questions that have come in, just a few things I'd like to mention before we wrap it up. So if you'd like to download a free sample of the hard-hitting deep dive vendor evaluations that we've talked about on any of our MarTech coverage areas, so it could be digital marketing asset management, campaign and lead management, web content management, you can do that right from our site. So the link's right here on the slide. And while you're on our site, just remember that you can go to the tools section that Kashyap mentioned. You can try out our shortlist builder tool. You can see how we do the vendor head-to-head comparisons. You can also try out RealScore, which you walk through a little bit. So with the Real Score demo, you can receive your score that shows you how effective you are with your incumbent technology. We just don't provide the benchmarking within or across the industries in this demo phase, but feel free to check it out and see how you score. And then listed here on the slide just are a few different ways that you can connect with Real Story Group. If you have any questions about a research or becoming a Real Story Group subscriber, you can always email us at explore@realstorygroup.com. And then one last mention for all of our subscribers on the line, just a reminder that tomorrow is our webinar on the clash of the MarTech titans. So we're going to be comparing head-to-head Adobe versus IBM versus Oracle versus Salesforce. So definitely don't want to miss that. All right, so with that, Kashyap, I will go ahead and turn it over to you for any of the questions. Thanks again.
Yes, thanks. So we have one question from Beatrice, which is about will the slides be shared to us afterwards? Yes, please expect to see the slides in your mailbox in a day or two. So the next question is about services costing a lot more. So the question is around any comments on implementation differences and length of challenging of making it work. So yeah, I'll take the duration or the length of implementation. So we've seen that for a complex implementation, and most of them are complex implementations because you're trying to get data from different systems to really take advantage of the promise of data-driven promising. It can range anywhere from 6 months to a year to get started and to start seeing this project live. And the challenges of making it work are, like I said, like I referred to in the original survey slides: lack of internal expertise, lack of right fit tools, and simply underestimating the complexity and effort involved in making these work. So implementation differences. So I think a lot of people want to marry these marketing automation and campaign management tools to their CRM or customer relationship management software. So if you have a standard CRM installed with which the tool that you've chosen is going to be integrated, and if there is a bidirectional sync, that's a good place to start. But if you have a homegrown CRM, or if the tool you've chosen doesn't integrate well with its CRM, it's probably going to take longer and create challenges. So please keep integration at the back of your mind when you select the specific tool. So I think some of the other questions have already been answered. So there is one more question. Let me just look at that. So there's a question on the influence of MarTech stack on upstream and downstream tools, and in particular if a customer data platform can make this easier. So one of the myths, I mean, it didn't make it to the top list, or I think it's in the top list, is like that there is an enterprise-wide data bus. So we see that customer data platforms being used more on the ad tech side, not on the MarTech side. So definitely, I mean, there is going to be an impact on the specific technologies that you already have in place. So we find that a marketing automation platform, that is a campaign and lead management tool, forms the core around which you can build the rest of your marketing stack. Say if you're interested in video marketing or content marketing, etc. So you don't start with those tools, but you try to select a marketing automation platform and layer those tools on top of, layer the other tools like content marketing or account-based marketing or video marketing or a social marketing around the marketing automation platform. So we're almost out of time here today. And if there are any unanswered questions, we will get to them via email. So thank you for joining us today. And before we sign off, I'd like to remind you that in addition to tomorrow's webinar on SmackDown of MarTech Clouds, we also have an entire series of market analysis webinars for our subscribers. So please do join us and have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye-bye.